In this video, we are going to be looking at some key differences between our Enneagram Type 2s, which you may have heard referred to as the giver or the helper, and our Enneagram Type 8, sometimes known as the challenger, the protector. And while at first glance, these types might almost look like complete opposites, they have so many similarities and overlaps, which can lead to some confusion between am I an 8, am I a 2? And this happens not only, but a lot of times to women, because they might feel like they have this type A energy and maybe identify most with that core motive. However, those behaviors tend to be a little bit more maybe masculine, and so they will kind of shape shift into the more stereotypical, what a woman should be, that self-sacrificing, kind of being the helper, being stereotypically nice and warm. And so there may be some confusion there. However, it happens for both men and women. And one of the other reasons why sometimes there is some confusion is because of the arrow that you'll see, that connecting arrow, 2 moving to an 8 and an 8 moving to a 2. So in times of stress, especially, you may see a 2 taking on some of those 8 behaviors, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second, but getting kind of big, getting loud. I've heard sometimes some 2s talk about being a highway to an 8, and then the 2 is the 8's growth arrow. So a lot of, when they're healthy, willing to be vulnerable, looking to make connections, and so it might just kind of depend on what's going on in your life as well. But at the end of the day, the thing that makes the 2 a 2 is that they are striving to feel connected. Their focus on life when they put on that 2 lens is others. How are other people feeling? What do they need? How can I help? And to be clear, 2s are not looking to help everyone all the time. They are, however, looking to take care of their core group, the people that they do value, prioritize. They will kind of do almost anything for them. And then our Type 8s at the end of the day are striving to feel strong and powerful, looking to avoid being taken advantage of. And so in this video, when that still is not clear, in this video we're going to be looking at some additional clues that will hopefully help you clarify and start to narrow down your dominant type even more. So when you're ready, I'll see you over on the other side. One of the things that has come up a lot this year is this confusion between am I a Type 2 or am I a Type 8, showing both of those types showing up in their top 2 or 3 results when we take an Enneagram Institute assessment, or as we're just kind of going through the process together. And so one of the key differences, well, actually, before I even get to that, I do want to make a note that you may have heard something called subtypes within the Enneagram. If you haven't, that's okay. I like to think of it as just flavors, different flavors of a type. And while it can seem a little confusing at first, I think rather than confusing or complicated, it's just complex, which is reflective of the complexity of the human beings that we are. And so I actually really appreciate that it gives some additional depth and distinguishes even further the differences that we may have even within that type structure. And so there are the self-preservation, a 1-to-1, or sometimes known as sexual or pioneering energy in the corporate space is how I refer to that. There's also a social flavor. Both social 2s and social 8s may look a lot alike. because both are really focused on that group dynamic and supporting, taking care of the group, leading a group potentially. And these twos especially are a little bit more comfortable taking that lead. Now, one of the key differences though that I'd like for you to reflect on is your relationship with leadership and leading specifically from the front. So a type 2 may feel like I'm born to support others and then will take the lead when needed. Whereas an 8 is going to feel more like I was born to lead and organize this group, this cause, this team. And so again, 2s, especially those social 2s, are absolutely able to step up and lead from the front. However, that may not be their first choice or their natural tendency, where that's going to be just more natural for the type 8 to step into that position. The other thing to consider is how you make decisions. We have something on the Enneagram called centers of intelligence, where we have our head, our heart, and our gut. We have access to all three, but there tends to be one that just automatically we default to quickly without thinking about it. And for our type 8s, they tend to have a really strong gut reaction. I can't tell you why I think this way, or I can't tell you why I did what I did. I just felt it. And for these types, it tends to work out for them. It tends to be correct most of the time. So they really trust their gut instinct. Whereas a 2, while they absolutely have access to the gut and their head feeling or their head center, they tend to automatically check in first with their feelings and really the feelings of others first. How might this make someone feel, or really get in touch with that, with their heart first, to make especially the important decisions. So it may not make sense logically. They may not be able, like the 8, to say why they're doing it, but they're doing it because of a feeling, because they're of an emotion that they have about it. That's one difference, another difference. And then the other thing that I'll leave you with, the other clue, is around this idea of anger and how I lost my train of thought there, and I look at my notes, so that's why the pause there. But yeah, what's your relationship with anger? And for an 8, they have a reputation of being angry. However, for 8s, depending on their past upbringing and trauma and all of that, but without having some strong experiences in that area, they tend to be very okay with anger, and it not being a bad thing or a wrong thing, it just being an intense emotion, just part of the emotional spectrum. You might be angry, and that's okay. And so they might get explosive and get really passionate, which is how they're going to view it most of the time. But they'll get over it. They tend to kind of move on. Occasionally, it might simmer and they might be looking to get revenge, but a lot of the times they'll move on from it and won't necessarily feel bad about it. Even if they might make somebody else feel bad, or it might hurt feelings, they won't, a lot of times, not all the time, every time, but have a tendency just to see it as, this is an emotion. I'm not gonna stew on it, feel bad about it, regret it. Whereas a 2, they have that highway to 8 I talked about. And so after they feel like, hey, I've given and given and given, I'm not getting anything back. And they just let it build up because they've repressed it. I'm fine. I don't need anything. I don't need your help. I'm fine. I'll allow my boundaries to be pushed time and time again. But at some point, it's going to get upset, and they're also going to have maybe a volcanic, explosion of anger. However, our 2s are going to feel bad about it. Once they've calmed down, most likely they will feel guilty about it. They'll regret it. They'll want to maybe check back. Hey, how are you doing after that? I'm sorry. And more focused on what was my impact of that anger outburst, more so than an 8 might. So both have access to it. We all have access to anger. 8s are not always angry all the time. But hopefully some of those nuances will give you some additional clues as to which type your dominant type is. And like I said, with that connection arrow, you're going to have access to both types of behavior, and you can almost use it. Hillary Kay was on the Enneagram MBA podcast recently, and she had shared that these points are almost called resource points, more so than stress arrows or growth arrows. And I like that because it truly is, each has the ability to tap into the strengths and the gifts of each other. But again, at the end of the day, the thing that's going to make you an 8 is that striving to feel strong and powerful. The thing that's going to make you a 2 is that striving to feel connected. And while there are some similarities, especially with our social 8 and our social 2s, wanting to protect the group, wanting to care for the group, a lot of similarities, but just at the end of the day, what is driving your bus most of the time? Not all the time, but most of the time. If you happen to be part of a group or a team and are interested in bringing this incredible tool called the Enneagram to your team or group to help everybody better understand themselves, better understand each other, better understand the impact that we have on each other, I'm going to invite you to check out some of the workshop options over at EnneagramMBA.com. I would love to learn more about your organization or team and share a little bit more about what we are doing over here at Enneagram MBA. But with that, I hope something in there was helpful. I've been saying this in these videos. Let me know if you know I'm a 2 versus an 8 or vice versa. Let me know in the comments what helped you decide, am I this or this, regardless if it was anything from this video. I like to hear from you, and it's also really helpful for others who stumble on this video to hear your personal experience and perspective about your own typing journey. And then if you have a question or did take away something from this video, I would also love to hear from you in the comments below. Like I said, I personally or selfishly love hearing from you, and also it adds value to this 2 versus 8 conversation. So drop a note below, and maybe I'll see you in another video.